Why use one color when you can use three? I hope this video answers that question, so let's get started. All right, before we begin this demonstration, I want to show what we're going to end up doing. Here are two apples. Just take a minute and look at them and do some observations. And we're also going to do a small landscape. Again, look at these side by side, and we're going to talk about what the differences are between these two landscapes. I will let you know ahead of time that there's no difference in the values of this landscape. Each one has the exact same value composition, but one is broken up into many colors and one uses one color to fill in the forms. The apple is different. The apple, I have two different values going on, and we'll talk about that. So that is what we're going to do next. Here we go. All right, we start with the first apple. I'm using three colors to make this apple, and I wanted to show that I'm using a number 12 flat brush, a big brush. You'll notice that I don't lick the paper very much. There's not a lot of dabbing going on. There's stroking, but not dabbing. In other words, one stroke to fill in the mass if I can. As few strokes as possible is what I try to do, and the brush is loaded with pigment. Those are the three colors I used in order to make the mass of the apple, because it's light on the right side and darker on the left side. So that is basically using three colors to create one apple, and I put in a dark shadow. So nothing too surprising about that. What am I doing here? Showing the different colors that I used, and also the difference between the number 12 flat and a number 10 flat. See how many strokes I'd have to use with that number 10 flat. It's just too many strokes, too many dabs. You have to decide when you're doing your subject how big a brush to use, and in general it's kind of wise to use a bigger brush than you think you need, and to load it with as much paint as possible, and also keep your paint nice and thick. All right, here comes apple number 2. Apple number 2 is not made with a spectrum of just reds. What I did was I tipped the color into purples because I'm going to have a wider value range on this apple. I'm still going to use three colors, but there's going to be a distinct difference in the values on this apple than there is on the apple on the left. So we'll carry through, and then we'll look at it through the value finder. All right, almost done. Stick in the stem and dark shadow. All right. Now we're going to look at it through the value finder. I think that's what happens next. But you can see that the apple on the left is kind of a washed out looking apple compared to the apple on the right. Oh, I didn't look at it through the value finder? I will. We'll come back to that. All right, we'll go down to demo number 2. Demo number 2 is showing that I'm using one color to fill in each one of those masses. So each mountain is a different color, and now the fields in front are one color. So one color to fill in each mass. That's one way to paint. What I'm doing on the second demo is using at least 2, and if possible, 3 colors to fill in the masses. And you'll see the difference in the two paintings. One is much more vibrant than the other one, and less flat looking, frankly, which kind of mirrors what's happening up above with that apple, which already to my eye on the left is looking flatter than the apple on the right, which has more of a roundness. All right, back to the mountains though, where there are at least 2 colors happening in each one of those mountain masses, at least 2 colors, if possible 3 now, on the meadow in front, even adding some orange in there. And you can see it's less flat, it has more depth. And now I'm going to have to dry everything before putting in the foreground. So let's see what happens after that. But again, I'm going to reiterate that the values in the two scenes of the mountains are exactly the same. The value didn't change. It was the use of color that changed in how it was going to fill in masses. So one color for each one of the masses on the left, and as 2, and if possible 3 or 4 colors for the masses on the right. And you'll be able to look and see the differences. Again, value is exactly the same. It's the variety of colors that are being used to fill in those masses that changes. And you can decide for yourself which one you think looks better. And you probably can tell I'm pretty biased in which one I think looks better. No surprise there, since we titled the video The Power of 3, right? The power of 3 is stronger than the power of 1. And you can see that. All right, check back to see if my apples are dry. They are. And here comes the value finder. That was to check to see if the value below on the scenes was exactly the same. It was. The value on the 2 apples, however, is different. The value on the left, using the value finder of the apples, is all one value, basically, I should say one value, but pretty much one value of light. Whereas the values on the left, I said that wrong, didn't I? I always say that wrong. The value on the left apple is almost all one value, and the value on the right apple has a variety. There we go. You can see. Yeah. And in a painting, like if you walk away from these two, one looks a little bit more washed out than the other one. I also wanted to show that even though I'm putting in a second coat, now that those apples are dry, second coat of the same colors that I used in the first pass, the value doesn't change at all. And people are confused by that. People think if you put on a second coat of a color that it's going to change the value. And it doesn't. What it changes is the brightness and the intensity, but not the actual value. The value will only change if you were to put a color of a different value layered on top. Then things shift. But that's not what I did here. So there's my finished piece. And the point here is the power of 3. On the lower scenery demonstration, the power of 3, and here I'll demonstrate it again in the sky. There's one color to make the sky, and I'm going to use 3 colors to make the sky with the painting on the right. So I think overall the right-hand painting is stronger than the left-hand painting because I use a variety of colors to fill in the masses. And that's what I'm talking about when I say mass for value, mix for color. And on the apples, the same thing is happening, only instead of using 3 colors, what I did was I used 3 different values to make that apple. But still, I'm always thinking in terms of 3s. And if you can think in terms of 3s instead of 1, then the power of your paintings will be stronger. And there they are side by side. And this might be a stylistic difference. Maybe you like one more than the other. That's up to you. So remember to keep the whites of your paper white, your paints wet, mass for value, mix for color. Remember the power of 3, and I'll see you next time. Oh, and please join my YouTube channel. Okay, bye-bye.